Hi everyone, welcome to the video. If you are new here, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Chelsea, and this video is going to be a true crime story. So I've always loved crime shows. I've always loved looking into the story behind what has happened to people in the crime shows. And I actually was a sociology / psychology major in college, so all of this stuff has fascinated me my entire life. So I actually wanted to make a true crime video for you guys and kind of give you more information about this specific story. So this story was publicized all over the world. It was one of the most horrific family murders, I think, in the history of the US. And it actually happened last year in August of 2018. And most of you have probably heard of it, but if not, this is going to be a very crazy video. So the story is about Chris Watts and his family. So they lived in Frederick, Colorado, him and his wife Shanann, but originally they met in North Carolina. She was married before, he was not. They were both in their late 20s when they met, and Chris actually messaged her over Facebook and wanted to see if she would go on a date with him. Well, at first she was not into him whatsoever. So she actually ignored his friend request the first time. She was in a different place at the time when she first said no. She was suffering from lupus at the time, so she was sick a lot. And Chris was kind of a heavier guy, pretty shy. And so when they went on their date, he took her out to the movies, and he was just wearing like shorts and a t-shirt, and she was all dressed up looking cute. And in the back of her head, she was like, what am I getting myself into? Well, she was already very hesitant about the entire date, but then she started feeling sick from her lupus. So she asked him if they could leave, and he asked if it'd be okay if he came back with her. And she said, are you sure? Like, I don't feel good. I'm just gonna be at home laying down. He's like, that's completely fine. And so the whole time that he was there, she was feeling awful. So he took care of her, made sure she had everything she needed. And that is what changed her mind about him and made her think, wow, this guy really does care. This is our first date and he's already taking care of me. So that's really where their relationship started. And ever since then, until they got married, they were head over heels in love with each other. But his mom wasn't really a fan of Shanann, and I think it's because Shanann was very outspoken. She had a very bubbly and strong personality, so she kind of overtook everything that she was doing. And Chris was the exact opposite. He was very quiet. He didn't really like confrontation. So he would kind of stay to himself. And I think that's what bothered Chris's mom the most about her. When they got married, Chris's parents didn't even come to the wedding. So they already kind of had a rocky relationship with Chris's parents. And then they decided to move to Frederick, Colorado for Chris's new job at Anadarko Petroleum. So he worked on the oil field, and she started working for this company. It's a multi-level marketing company called Level, and it's the Thrive business, if you've heard of it. And she really started getting very successful in that business, and then he was obviously working in the oil company, so they were making decent money. Well, in 2000, let me clarify this. So their little girl Bella, she was born in 2013, so she was 4. And then they have another little girl named Celeste, but they called her Cece. She was born in 2015. So they had Bella a year after they got married, because they got married in 2012, and they filed for bankruptcy in 2015. So there's some information out there about why they had to file for bankruptcy, but not a ton. So I already know that that was a reason why there was more stress on their marriage, and Shanann worked from home doing this business. So it caused a lot of extra pressure on them because, you know, that's her full income. She was relying completely on Lavelle to pay their bills, and then he had his job, but I think he only made like $60,000 a year. So I think their average income for the whole year was around 100, which is a lot, but in Colorado that's not a ton, because I think they were paying 400,000 something for their house. And I'll post pictures to kind of show you guys different things about what their house looked like, what their kids looked like, what they looked like, all that stuff. So obviously they already had financial issues in 2015, and in 2018 Shanann was really taking off with her business, like one of the highest in her company. She had all of these different members and clients, and she was very active on Facebook. So if you actually go to Shanann Watts, you can find all of her videos on Facebook of her talking about Lavelle, and her kids are on there. Chris is on there, and you can kind of tell he's very hesitant to be in all of her videos. And obviously it's because he's shy, but also it's very interesting at the same time that he doesn't really want to be in her videos. He doesn't want to have any part of it, but he does it for her. Chris and Shanann were going on a vacation in June, and this was in 2018, June of 2018. The murder happened August of 2018. So she had just found out she was pregnant, and they had been trying for a boy, and she ended up finding out that she was pregnant with a boy. So she thought that Chris was going to be ecstatic about this because they already had 2 girls and he really wanted a boy. So he got what he wanted, and they were really excited. They were going on their trip to California in June, and this was for the Lavelle company. She had won this trip, so they went together. There were pictures all over Facebook of them there. They looked so happy. Well, around the same time that they were on this vacation, about 2 weeks before, Chris switched the way that he was working in his company. So normally he would be out on the oil field doing the rigs, all of that stuff. Well, he got switched in his company to a higher level, so he was always at their main office. Well, one of the girls who worked there, she actually was like their scheduling manager of where they went, and they would have to speak to her about certain issues that they were having. And so he one day went in there to ask her about an issue that he was having with a certain oil rig, and I guess they got to talking. He was attracted to her, she was attracted to him, but at that moment nothing had happened. They just obviously saw each other at work a lot. Well, then there was another day that I guess they both ran into each other at work, but they were outside, and they got to talking even more, and I guess they just started realizing they had a lot in common. Well, so about a week before he left with Shanann, they were emailing back and forth to each other, and there's emails that you can see if you research all of this, and it's just talking about how her name was Nicole Kessinger, and it was talking about how she wishes she could have a marriage like he did and have that family, and how she's just so like almost envious of the life that he's living, and she's just kind of, you know, throwing things at him nonchalantly, but she's doing it. So he had like his regular phone that he used, that his wife called him on, and then he had his work phone. So I'm pretty sure he gave her his work phone number so that she could contact him if he ever needed help outside of like in the oil rig and stuff like that. What ended up happening was they started texting, just kind of getting to know each other. He even said in one of the interviews that he never meant for anything to actually happen between that. It was more just flirting. That, you know how that ends up. But they wanted to, I guess, still talk, but he was hesitant because he had a family. Well, so he went on the trip with his wife. They were there for like a full week. This was in June. And he got back and then from the trip, and so did Shanann. And right after they got back, Shanann and the girls went to go visit his family and her family back in North Carolina for 6 weeks. Okay, this is where the story goes upside down. So they left like July, or it might have been the very end of June. It was like somewhere around there, the end of June, beginning of July. So they were gone for the full 6 weeks. And Shanann, there's text messages with Shanann and Chris, and between her and her friends, and she was talking about how much he just like was loving on her before she left, and how excited he was for the baby and all of these things. Well, so not even like 4 days after she leaves, he stops really contacting her very much. And this is weird for Chris because, you know, he's a people pleaser. He wants to make sure that his wife is happy, that his kids are happy, and now that he has this new girl in his life, he is spending all of his time with her. All of his time while she's gone. She was hanging out with him like at different places, and they would go to her house and spend the night. Like, I don't think he ever slept at his own house during this entire time, besides to go home and change for work and make some food. But it's crazy. So they had been hanging out, they were sleeping together. He was like all about this girl, and of course, like, she liked him, but she knew he had a family. So she had asked him, like, hey, you have a family, I don't know if this is really acceptable, blah 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 blah. He's like, well, me and my wife are getting a divorce, so we're separated right now. We're just living at the house together because of the kids, but our divorce will be final soon. So in her mind, she's thinking, okay, well, it's fine, we'll make this work then. So they're gone. Shanann and the girls are gone that whole time. She's pregnant. I think she's like 2 months pregnant at this time. And she keeps trying to get a hold of him, and he's not answering. So she starts catching on that something's a little fishy. And he keeps just telling her, oh, work's been really busy. All this nonsense. So obviously he's been spending time with Nicole. They've been going on these trips together because he has all of these gift cards from Anadarko that he had gotten. So every time they would go somewhere, he would never use his credit card. He would just use the gift cards. So they had gone like 2 to 3 trips together, and it was stuff that Chris really, really did like. Like, he loved cars, so they went to like a car show. They did some more adventurous stuff, and I don't think Shanann really was into all that, so this really made him fall head over heels for Nicole. And Shanann and the girls were gone for 6 weeks, but Chris came down for the last, I think, week of their trip to see his family. Well, Shanann and Chris's mom got in this huge argument because Celeste, Cece, the little one, she is allergic to like nuts and stuff, so she has to be very careful with what she consumes. And they had other family members over there, and there was like kids and stuff at Chris's parents' house. And Chris's mom got out this pistachio ice cream and was giving it to the other kids. Well, I guess Shanann walked in when this happened, and Cece was sitting right next to one of the other kids who was eating the ice cream, and she like lost it. She's like, if Cece would have gotten a hold of that, she could have died, like all these things, because she would have gone into anaphylactic shock. So she was just livid, and Shanann and Chris's mom got in a huge fight about it, and she pretty much was like, I want nothing to do with you. Shanann told this to Chris's mom, and they left, and they went back to Shanann's parents' house. So Shanann was like trying to get a hold of Chris to tell him what was going on. Well, of course, he's trying to stand up for Shanann and also understand where Chris's mom was coming from. So it was just such a mess before he even got down there. So he gets there. Shanann's the one that picks him up from the airport. And you know, normally your husband that you haven't seen in forever, you would expect him to embrace you with full arms and be like, oh babe, I missed you so much, I love you. It's not what happened. She picks him up. He barely even says hi to her. He gets his stuff. They get in the car. She's just beyond confused at this point. And so he didn't even really touch her, didn't want to kiss her. He wouldn't even have sex with her when they tried, or like when she asked him that night. So she just knew something was off, and she couldn't figure out what it was. And of course, Chris was very quiet about everything. So, and he was really hard to read. So she had no idea. And she never would have thought that he was having an affair, because, you know, he's always been very loyal to her and all about her. So it threw her for a huge loop. Well, so the whole week that they were there together, he really was just on his phone, texting Nicole Kessinger the whole time, really not paying attention to his kids or his family whatsoever. So Shanann knew something was wrong, and she confronted him about it, and he pretty much told her that he had fallen out of love with her. And in her mind, she's like, how do you fall out of love with me in 6 weeks, 5 weeks? And he goes, I don't know, I feel like our chemistry isn't there anymore. I don't feel the same way about you. And of course, she's pregnant with this baby, and he's like, I really didn't even want another kid. Like, I'm okay with just Bella and Cece. And, you know, how do you handle something like that when all that's being said to you at one time, when you're over here in a different state trying to really like pay attention to other people, but still, you know, you have your husband back home. So in her mind, she was thinking, what did I do wrong? Well, so by that time, this was like the end of July, and they were coming back, I think, the first week of August. Well, Shanann had another business trip to go to in Arizona that weekend of the 10th. So she was gone from the 10th through the night of the 12th/13th. I'll get into why it's like the slash in a second. So she even asked Chris if he'd prefer for her to stay home so that they could work on their marriage. He's like, no, it's fine, like, you should go, I have the girls, like, have a great time, we'll fix this once you get back. Well, of course, Shanann was like, I don't want to go, like, I want to stay here, I want to make this work. And he just kept telling her, like, no, go, just go. So she packs her things, and I think she was only home for 2 days after they got back from their 6-week trip, and then she's off again. So Chris is with the girls, and that Saturday, so Shanann left on a Friday. That Saturday, Chris texts Shanann saying he got tickets to the Colorado, I think the Rockies game, and it was through Anadarko. So he was like, hey, is it okay if I get a babysitter for the girls, because I really want to go to this game? Well, she was like, yeah, that's fine. So they like messaged a friend, and the daughter of their friend came over and took care of the girls. So Saturday night, he ended up meeting up with Nicole Kessinger and going back to her apartment, sleeping together, and then they went out to this place called the Lazy Dog and had dinner. Well, Chris had run out of all of his gift cards, so the only thing he could do was use a credit card, which he could have used cash, whatever, but he didn't have cash, so he had to use his credit card. And Shanann and Chris obviously shared their bills. She saw on her phone, she got like a notification that Chris had charged over $50 at Lazy Dog, and a red flag pops in her head, like, why is your meal $50, first of all? And I thought you were at the Colorado Rockies game. Well, he gets a text from her, like, what? I don't understand what's going on. He's like, oh, I was with a friend, we just left the game, I got them food, blah blah blah, whatever. So in her mind, she doesn't even know what to do at this point. So she's obviously talking to her friends about it while they're at this trip, and she's like, I think something's wrong. I don't know if he's cheating, like, or what is happening, but all of her friends, of course, are trying to give her advice and tell her what to do. And at that point, I know, like, in her mind, she's probably just going stir crazy and doesn't know what to do. Well, so the babysitter tells the cops that he got home around like 10:30 that night. So the girls were already asleep when he got home, and the next day was a Sunday, and Shanann is supposed to come home that night from her trip. Well, they had a birthday party to go to earlier on that day at the next door neighbor's house, and Chris takes them, and they're having like a great time. But of course, Chris is on his phone texting Nicole, really like in the moment with his kids. He was more focused on his phone, so other people were noticing weird things too about him that he normally wouldn't do. And so Shanann texted Chris around like 4 or 5, like, hey, can I see a picture of the girls? So he sent her pictures of the girls, and they like sent this really weird one. It was like one of the girls' baby dolls. So it was like a regular life-size baby doll, and it had this white sheet completely over it. Like, it looked just like someone had died, and you'd have put the sheet over their body. And I don't remember what exactly it said. I'll post it up here so you can see it, but it was so creepy. She was kind of weirded out by it, but she thought maybe one of the girls did it, and he just sent it to her. So whatever, she ignored it. Well, so her plane was supposed to leave that night around like 10, and she was supposed to get home around midnight. Well, she texted Chris because the girls had school, their first day of school, that next day, and she was like, hey babe, can you get the girls ready for school? Make sure their lunch is packed and everything. I love you, I'll see you soon. Well, he didn't really say, like, I love you back, nothing. He was just like, okay, I got it, I'll get it done. Well, her flight ends up getting delayed because of, I think it was rain or just bad weather. So instead of her getting in around like 11:30 or 12, she doesn't get in till 2 a.m. that next morning on the 13th of August. So there is video of her walking from her friend's car. Nicole, her friend is named Nicole, not the same Nicole though, and she brings her home, and you see Shanann walking up to the front door with her luggage in her hand, and she's unlocking the door, and that's the last time anybody sees her alive. So nobody knows exactly what happened, the true story. Chris did he did admit the true story, his true story, 2-3 months ago, but during the trial in November of 2018, he was not honest about any of it. So I will tell you what he told the cops the first time, and then what he actually admitted happening. So she gets home, she puts her bag down, she comes upstairs. Chris is supposedly asleep already, and she doesn't take any of her makeup off. She just gets in like a long t-shirt and has underwear on. So she gets in bed, and Chris has to be up at like 5:30 for work every morning, and so obviously it's already 2 o'clock. He's gonna be up soon because he loved to work out. And she gets in bed, and he said he felt her get in bed, and he woke up around like 4:30, 4:45 to go work out, and then he came back upstairs and woke Shanann up and told her that he wanted to have a serious conversation with her. And he was just telling her, like, I don't love you anymore, I want to get a divorce, I just can't be with you, all of these things. And Shanann was like, well, what caused this? Like, I don't understand. This is coming out of nowhere. And so he just beating around the bush, just not being fully honest, not admitting that he's having an affair. He's just like, I just don't feel it between us anymore. Well, during that moment, there was something that was said, and this was never clarified of what was actually said, that caused him to react this way, but he called it an emotional conversation, and that he went back downstairs to get ready for work. She was heated, whatever. He's downstairs doing stuff, and there's like baby monitors all over the house, and he supposedly sees a baby monitor and sees Shanann on top of one of the girls strangling them. So he runs upstairs, gets her off of one of the girls, and strangles her. So both of the girls were supposedly already dead from strangulation from their mom, and Chris goes to save the girls by killing their mother from strangulation. Well, so this is the story that is all confused and not sure what was going on. And so there's video surveillance from the house next door, from the party that they were at. So they knew these people, and they had this camera that pointed towards their garage. And Chris would always park on the side of the street. He had just a Anadarko truck that he would use. It was a work truck. And then Shanann had this white Lexus that she got from Lavelle for moving up in the company. So she always left that in the garage. And when Chris would leave for work, he normally just had his lunchbox with him, and he would walk down the the driveway to get to his car, and then he would get in and go. Well, this specific morning, I think it was like 5:45 when all this was happening, you see him walking down the driveway. He gets in his truck and he backs it up into the driveway and like cuts off half of the truck bed into the actual garage. So he's trying to cover something up. So all you see, it's kind of blurry, all you can see is him transporting stuff from the garage into his truck, and that's all you really see on the footage. Well, he leaves the house and drives to his job, and this is the part that I left out, so let me explain this part really quick. So that night, Chris told one of the guys that he worked with, because normally, like I said before, he would work in the actual office. Well, that morning, he decided to take this other guy's shift, where he actually went on site to work at an oil rig that morning. And it's just weird how all of that was planned out. So he goes to the oil rig, and he puts Shanann's body in the ground, and he digs a hole and covers her up. And then he takes the two girls, and at this time we weren't sure if they were dead or not yet, because this story was very confusing. So he puts the girls in 2 different oil tanks and puts them in a like 8-inch hole. It's not very big. And he shoves them down there, gets rid of all of the evidence. And then, like, not even 30 minutes later, all of his coworkers are showing up at the oil rig, and everybody said he acted like nothing was wrong. He was very calm, acting himself, and he was obviously doing what he was supposed to do. And he So his story kind of stops right there for a second. Well, Shanann obviously was pregnant. She had like her 15-week checkup, and she wasn't feeling very good, obviously, because of like what was going on and everything. Well, her best friend Nicole, the one that dropped her off at the house from their trip, she told Nicole that she was going to go to a doctor's appointment that morning at 10. Well, so Nicole texted Shanann around like 11:30, or it was sometime around there, to ask her how her appointment went, but she never got a response. Well, Shanann was very active on her social media accounts, her phone, all of that, because of her company. She had to be. She had clients messaging her all the time. So Nicole thought this was very weird that Shanann didn't message her back. So she gave it a little bit of time, tried to call her, no response. So her and her son drove over to Shanann's house to see what was going on. When they got there, obviously, Chris's truck wasn't there, and they looked into the garage because they have like those windows at the very top, and they looked into the garage and they saw that Shanann's car was still there. Well, Shanann and Nicole had been friends for a really long time, so every time Nicole would come over, she knew the code to the front of their house. They had like a key code on the front of their door, and she tried to type it in to get into the house. Well, the deadbolt was locked, and they never lock the deadbolt unless if they're sleeping. So Nicole was very confused. She didn't know what was going on, so she called the police, and she also called Chris. She was like, Chris, where is Shanann? I don't know what's going on. Like, normally she responds to me when I'm texting her, and she was supposed to have an appointment today with the doctor, and I haven't heard from her. So do you know what's going on? He goes, no, like she was home asleep when I was there leaving for work, and the girls were still asleep, so I didn't see them awake when I left. And she told me that night when we were having a conversation that she was going to take the girls to a friend's house, a friend that he didn't know of. But Nicole knew that Chris knew all of their friends, so she was kind of confused on that part and worried. So that's why she called the police. Well, when the police showed up, Chris obviously wasn't there, and Nicole kept texting him like, hey, why aren't you here? Like, this is serious. We can't get into the house to make sure Shanann is okay. Like, she's pregnant. Something could be seriously wrong. So from the time that she was trying to get a hold of him to the time he showed up to the house, it was like a whole hour. And of course his job was far, but still it took him forever to get there. Well, so the cops show up first, and there was actually camera footage of the cop having like a camera right here on his chest, so you can see everything. So Nicole's already obviously like, I don't really know what's going on. Like, they never locked the deadbolt, her car's here, all this stuff. Well, like not even 10 minutes later, Chris pulls up in his truck. He shakes the policeman's hand. It's like, hey sir, how are you? Opens the garage. And before he walks into the house, he opens Shanann's car, and it looks like he's looking for something, or he's putting something in her car. So everyone's kind of looking at each other weird, like, what is he doing? Well, so he's going into the house to open up the front door to let the cop in, and to let Nicole in. So from the time he opens the back door to get to the front door, he's in there for 2 minutes by himself. That's a long time to get from the back door to the front door. So that part, nobody really knows what he was doing in that moment. But so he opens the front door, and the cop asks, hey, can I come in? He's like, yes, come on in. And he's like, are you okay if we just like look around, try to find stuff that could pin us to where Shanann could be and if she's here? So he's like, yes, go ahead. So as they're searching the house, Chris just looks frantic, and he's trying to, cover things up. So they're upstairs looking around in the girls' rooms. The girls' rooms look normal. Looks like they'd gotten out of bed for school. But when they go into Chris and Shanann's bedroom, all of the sheets are pulled off of the bed and they're not there. So that part was really weird. And they're all upstairs talking. Chris is, of course, like right here with his phone, like typing to whoever, who knows. It was probably Nicole or other people, trying to act like he's trying to find her. And Shanann's friend Nicole was like, hey, could they be at the pool? And he's like, why would they be at the pool? They were supposed to be at school. So he like calls the school, and of course they're not at school, and all this crazy stuff. So Nicole's son went downstairs and was looking through like the cushions on the couch and stuff, and Shanann's phone was in one of the cushions, like shoved down into the couch cushion, and it was off, and her phone was never off, like I said, because of her business. So they tried to turn it on, and she had a key code or like a passcode on there, and so they couldn't actually access any of the information on her phone. And they were just sitting there trying to figure out the passcode to see if there was anything that she had messaged from the time that Chris had left, but they couldn't find anything. So the only information they had at that moment was that Chris had left for work, they were still home sleeping when he left, and that Shanann had told Chris that night before when they were in their conversation that she was going to take the girls to a friend's house that he didn't know. That's all. So by that time, I think they were in the house for like maybe 10 minutes, and I don't know who said it, but one of them was like, well, there's your next door neighbor who has the cameras. Maybe there's some footage of like the girls and Shanann walking out of the house. So they go over there, and the guy's like going to find the footage, and Chris is like standing over here, the TV's here, and the guy who owns the house is like over here, and he's, you know, using his thing to scan and find the information on that specific moment of the day. And Chris is like having his hand on his head, he's freaking out. He's over here with his hand super close texting again, and so the guy gets the footage. It's everything that I told you, where you can see him backing his car into the garage, loading and unloading all this stuff. Something's just not right. So in that moment, Chris probably thought he was about to get caught. Well, the footage was kind of blurry, and there was nothing to show like him transporting a body, nothing. So they had no proof to pin anything on him. So the cop lets Chris leave the house to go talk to the other cop that had just showed up, and the guy, I don't remember his name, that lived next door, but him and the cop were talking, and the guy was like, you know, he's acting very weird. He's normally very quiet. Like, while we were watching that footage, he's trying to explain himself and say like, oh, I was putting that in the car, blah blah blah, when normally he would never do that. So he's trying to cover his tracks, and the cop is over here trying to be very like not one-sided. He's trying to be very open-minded about everything. So he's like, well, thank you for your information, I'm gonna go. So they obviously didn't have enough to pin anything on him, because they didn't even know where the kids and Shanann were at that moment. So that next day, the news channels start showing up at his front door, and they ask him if he can do a like if he can speak to the camera about his family and pleading to get them back, all this stuff, and he agrees. So he's like on News 3, News 8, I don't even know what it was in Colorado, but he wouldn't even say their name, none of them. He's like, the girls, Shanann, like, just very, like, not even my wife, my nothing, like, he wasn't even concerned. He was just like, whoever has them needs to come, like, bring them back. And so people were already speculating he was hiding something, but like I said, there wasn't enough proof. So this was the next day. This was on the 14th. So I think on the 15th, 15th or 16th day of August. He is obviously talking to Nicole Kessinger, the one he was having the affair with during this whole thing, and he was telling her, like, my family's gone and all this crazy stuff, and she's like, what do you mean your family's gone? He's like, they're missing. She was like, you don't know where they are? So she starts getting very curious on what's going on too. Well, when she starts seeing all this stuff come out on the news, she finds out that Chris's wife was pregnant. At this moment, she was 3 months pregnant, and he had told her that they were having a separation and that they were going to get a divorce. And so she starts thinking, okay, you told me this, your stories aren't adding up, what's going on? And of course, he's beating around the bush with her too, so she ends up going to the police to tell them about their romance, what they had going on, like how she was with him the whole time that his family was gone. And so that next day, they have Chris come in for questioning and a lie detector test or whatever you call it. And the lady was like telling him how she can tell if he's lying or not. And so she was like, just be as honest as you can. Our biggest goal here is to find the kids and your wife. So she's asking him like simple questions like, what color is your hair? What color is your car? Like stuff you obviously wouldn't lie about. And then like right after that, she starts asking, do you know where Shanann and the girls are? And he says no. And then she's just going into all these questions, and she asks, did you have any part in the disappearance of your family? And the way he said no triggered the lie detector test into spiking to show her that he was lying. So that's the only thing they had to go off of, was that one question. And so the next day they call him back in and they're like, hey, we just want to let you know, like, you failed the lie detector test. You know where the kids are and your wife. Like, what is going on? Like, tell us what happened. And so he's in there for like 8 hours. It was ridiculous. So much time. Lying, couldn't keep his story straight, and the lie detector lady and then this other detective or whatever they're called, like people who are trying to get someone to tell the truth, were in there. And he just wouldn't be honest the whole time. And then finally the lady was like, did Shanann do something to the kids? And like, you felt like you had to protect them? And he's like, oh no, like, no. And she's like, but like, are you sure? And so then that's when he started making up that story that I told y'all earlier about how he was downstairs getting his food ready for work, and he saw her, Shanann, on the baby monitor strangling the girls. So that's how that story happened. And so his dad actually flew down from North Carolina to be with him during all of this that was going on. And he was in another room. Well, so when he had admitted that he had killed his wife due to, protecting the girls, they had him come in, the dad, to talk to Chris to figure out what was going on. So that's when he admitted what he had done to his dad. Like, he told his dad what he had done, and he still was sticking to that story, that he was protecting his kids from his wife. His wife, went crazy. And so at this point, they were trying to figure out where they were. And that's when he told them they were at the oil rig that he was at earlier that August morning. And he showed them the two girls were in the oil tanks, and then Shanann was buried somewhere off in the middle of this pasture area. So they end up getting fire trucks and all of these forensic science people out there to go get the kids out and get Shanann. This part's just horrific. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. If you want to know more about that part, you can look at it yourself. But pretty much, like their bodies had been in there for so long. I think it had been like 3 or 4 days by this point. So there was like slippage on their bodies. So their skin was starting to come off. And Shanann had actually, when she had died, her baby had her baby, and the fetus was in the grave with her. So it was just horrific. Like, the worst thing you could possibly think of to happen happened. And so Chris obviously gets arrested. The whole country is shocked because, he was this so-called lovey father, like provides for them all this crazy stuff. And then they find out about Nicole Kessinger and how she had a lot to do with his mental state during this time because of the attention she was giving him and this new idea of a new life and all of this stuff, because she was helping him plan to move out of his house and get his own apartment and be closer to her and just all of this nonsense. And of course, she stops talking to him. She has to go into like witness protection because people are wanting to kill her. He is now in jail in Colorado, and so the incident happened, or the murders happened in August, and he didn't get tried until November. So obviously he pleaded guilty to all of the murders, or not to all of the murders, to the murder of Shanann. And at that time, during the trial, Shanann's parents obviously are heartbroken about everything, so they're just saying all these things like, you're a monster, you were supposed to protect my daughter and my little girls, all of this stuff. And then his parents get on there and they're pretty much telling him like, we love you, we forgive you, all of this stuff. And it's just like, I get it's your son, but he just killed his entire family. Like, what? So he's tried, and then he gets life in prison for the murder of, I'm pretty sure he got convicted for all of their murders at that moment. And then in, I think it was May of 2019, the people who were the lie detector and the other guy, I'm sorry, I don't know what that's called, but they went and visited him in prison. I think they moved him somewhere else. He wasn't in Colorado anymore, but he got to move to a different prison, and they were asking him to actually tell the truth, and there was nothing that he could be convicted for anymore. That this honesty would just give Shanann's parents clarity, give all of the people in the world clarity about what really happened. And so what he ended up telling, the story of the true story, who knows if it's fully true, but so when Shanann showed up at 2 a.m. that morning on August 13th, she'd gone upstairs, same thing, got in bed, laid down next to him, and she started rubbing his back. And he woke up and they had sex. I don't know why or what, I don't know, but they had sex, and they rolled back over after and fell asleep, and then woke back up when he was getting ready for work. And that's when he told her, like, I don't love you anymore, I don't want to be with you. She was asking the same questions, like, what happened between those 5 weeks that you're not telling me about? And he still didn't tell her that he was having an affair. He just kept telling her, like, I don't want to be with you anymore. And so this is what he said. He said that what really made him go crazy was that Shanann told him that he would not be able to see any of the kids ever again, that she would move away and he would never have any contact with them ever again. And he said what he did was he got on top of her. Supposedly he was already on top of her having this conversation. I don't know why. That part still was weird. And he said that he put his hands on her neck and strangled her to death. And that in that moment, he couldn't let go. It was like something else was holding his hands down. And she didn't fight, nothing. So that's the part that's a little iffy, whether she was actually asleep when that happened, when he strangled her, or what. Like, she normally was she was a fighter, you know, and she would have fought back. So that part, nobody really knows what really happened. But so anyways, she was gone. He was rolling her up into the sheet on their bed, and Bella, the older one that was 4, walks into their room, and she's like, "What are you doing to mommy?" And he's like, "She's sick, honey. We need to take her to the hospital." So he rolls her up on the sheet, takes her down the stairs, and the girls are both up at this point, and they're following him downstairs, and they're still in their nightgowns from bed. They have like all their little loveys and stuff that they slept with. And when he backs his truck into the garage, he's trying to hide the walking of him carrying Shanann. He puts her in the back of the truck on the ground, and then he loads up the 2 girls and puts them in the back of the truck with their mom on the ground. So they're still alive at this point, and he drives them all the way to his oil rig, and it's about 45 minutes away from their house. And this part's awful. So he gets to the oil rig. He takes the wife, Shanann, out of the car, gets the shovel, buries the hole, probably like 20 to 50 yards away from the car, so the girls can see what's going on, but they don't know what's going on. And he buries Shanann right there in this field. And then he comes back to the car. I'm really sorry to tell you this part, but this is what happens. He gets back to the car. He opens the side on Cece, where Cece is, and he takes her blanket, he puts it over her head, and he suffocates her to death. And Bella sits there and watches that happen. She starts crying. She looks at her dad and goes, What just happened to Cece? And of course, he's not talking. He's not saying anything. He shuts the door, goes to the other side, opens up Bella's side of the door, and she goes, "No, Daddy, please don't. Like, please don't do to me what you did to Cece." And she just keeps saying, like, "Are you about to do to me what you did to Cece?" And right after she said that, he put the blanket over her head and did the same thing to her. And she actually tried to fight back. Like, on the forensic reports, there were like bite marks in her mouth, and she had bitten her tongue and all of this stuff. So he takes both of the girls, puts them in the oil tanks separately, and he gets rid of all of the evidence of them, and that's how he tries to cover it up. And the saddest thing is that when he's leaving to go to the house after Nicole had called him about the whole situation, he's listening to this song. I wish I could remember who it's by. I'll post it up here so that you can go listen to it, so you kind of know exactly what I'm talking about. But pretty much it's a very like rough song. It's a rock song. It's a like heavy metal, like it's just awful. Like, it was talking about killing your family, like no strings, nothing, like you're on your own, like all this crazy stuff. And it was a song that him and Nicole Kessinger, I guess, liked listening to, or that band they liked listening to together. And so that was the true story. And even during the interview, when he actually told this story, he wanted to talk to Nicole Kessinger to see if she was okay. I don't know. The whole thing is messed up. I'm not gonna give you my opinion on it because I have a lot of opinions about it, and there's a lot more detail that I didn't fully go into about certain situations that happened between him and Nicole and Kessinger, and then him and Shanann. Obviously you can find all of this on YouTube or Google and stuff, so oh man, that was crazy. It ate me up for months after finding out about it, and I did so much reading and looking at all the documentaries on it, and it just tore me up inside because you really can't trust anybody, and that's the scariest part about this whole story. But yeah, so that's it for this true crime about Chris Watts. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more of these true crime stories, I will definitely do more, because like I said, I love researching all of these and finding out all the details about it. So I will see you in the next video.